Good afternoon. Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Katie, Lisa, everyone for having us. I was reflecting, a lot can happen in a year, and last time I was talking to this audience, we presented our web application for automated machine learning. And I'm excited and proud about the customer group that we have with that and the value that they're getting. But to me, it feels a little bit like Henry Ford making faster horses. Today, we're going to show you something completely new. We've narrowed our focus onto this problem that probably everyone in this room deals with, and we know it's hard, and we know that there's a lot of randomness. But I think we can solve for these silos that exist. When a technical director, a sporting director, or some kind of squad planner receives different information from scouts, from the data folks, or from their own gut, maybe reputation, maybe agents, that information isn't all in one place where they need it. So we're trying to solve for that. We believe that there is a better way to do this than is done today. This idea of collaboration and centralization isn't new, but we've learned a few things from a year in the market. There are some obvious challenges that everyone has in common. The first one is, it's not hard to find good players, not even hard to find players that others aren't looking at, but it's hard to find the ones that fit your needs and your criteria. It's also difficult for folks across an organization to collaborate on their recruitment process quickly. And it's also hard to get that information where you need it. So what does this look like in our new mobile application? If you have a new player on your mind, you want to be able to see all of that data from tracking data, event data, and what your scouts have to say in one place to decide if you dig deeper. Maybe you've sold a player suddenly, and you have to find someone similar to replace them. When comparing players, you want to understand how they rate against your own incumbents, starters or across the squad, and understand who is going to fit your playing style needs. And finally, we provide recommendations on players that you're not even thinking of. What all of this does is allow your data team to focus on their areas of expertise.
So what we offer comes in three main layers. One is our data engineering pipeline layer, where we work with you to ingest your different data sources, bring those into one unified Snowflake database. If you have common data sources we worked with before, like Statsbomb, of course, then we can flip those on and have that data available almost immediately. But we're also happy to work with any other data sources you'd like to provide. The middle modeling layer is what I'm going to focus on mainly today, where we build some of our own custom metrics to help you identify player talent. And then last, the mobile app that Jake just showed, to help make these results digestible and actionable to executives. So I'm going to spend all my time in this middle layer, but I want to call out that anyone who's worked in sports analytics knows that it's easy for the first and third to suddenly balloon up and take up 90% of your time. So even though the middle layer is where we're going to spend our time today, I want to call out that it's just one piece of the overall puzzle. As I've transitioned from basketball to soccer, my consumption of radar charts has risen exponentially. And this is not a vendetta against radar charts. They are perfectly fine. But comparing 2 or 3 players at once is difficult. Comparing thousands of players in radar charts is, of course, impossible. So it's useful to have a single number metric that you can use to filter the search space of tens of thousands of players down to a more reasonable set, who then you can look at the scout's opinions of, digest your analyst's opinions of, or, of course, dive into radar charts to your heart's content. This is not an especially original idea. We can build on industry standards. Let's shift into history class here for a minute. Like almost any sports metric, we can start in baseball, where wins above replacement has completely changed the way that executives value players. It's changed the way that media votes on awards. It's even changed how fans think about the game. The entire sport, the dialogue is different because of this stat. In my world of basketball, we have this alphabet soup in the middle. There's not one single metric that's latched on quite as strongly as wins above replacement, but each of these has built on the last to create metrics that are closer and closer to capturing player value. And a lot of these basketball metrics are useful in football as well, because both those sports have this flow element to them. Baseball is a very discrete sport. It's almost a physics problem sometimes, whereas both basketball and football have this element of player value, where you can help a teammate not by doing something that shows up in the stat sheet, but by just occupying space, drawing a defender away, and freeing up room for someone else to score. So we can borrow some of those techniques and apply those to soccer as well. And last, football. Plenty of folks have done great work in this space already. Of course, on-ball value from Statsbomb, Vape, a handful of others are out there as well. So we've thrown our hat into the ring here with Gemini plus minus. For the data scientists in the room, it is a ridge regression with a Bayesian prior. For the non-data scientists, I apologize. I promise that is the most technical I'm going to get. But it's essentially a stat that anchors players to a statistical prior based on their actual event-level production, but then drags that number up or down based on some team impact stats borrowed from the basketball architecture that I mentioned earlier. And then this is adaptable to your data. We don't have a single version of Gemini plus minus because we are not a data provider. So the version that I'm going to show now is built strictly on Statsbomb event-level data, but we are happy to work with you to bring in any additional data sources, tracking data, proprietary sources. Anything you would like to have integrated into your own version of this metric is what we'll provide. So this is great if everyone plays against the same caliber of competition, but that is, of course, not the case, so we have to make adjustments there. So let's say we want to see how someone would transition from Brazil to the Premier League. We could look at the history of players who have made that transition, take the average change in production, and assume that's how it works. And that's a decent start, but for any transitions that are less common than others, you're going to be prone to outliers skewing the entire sample, and you can end up in these weird paper, rock, scissors situations where League A is better than B, and B is better than C, but somehow C is also better than A, and we don't want that. So instead of just looking at Brazil to the Premier League, we can look at Brazil to Italy, France, Spain, and then how players from those countries transition to the Premier League. We can build out this complicated graph network of all these possible transitions back and forth and get a much more holistic view that's less prone to be thrown off by outliers. Let's dive into an example here. If you look at raw, unadjusted GPM, you're essentially looking at how well a player plays relative to his competition. So the top of the leaderboard will be a lot of players who are talented, but who are playing in lesser leagues and beating up on lesser competition. So we have Tavernier here, playing in the Scottish League, who ranks 9th in unadjusted GPM, whereas Salah, Premier League, very, very good, but only 41st, because there's a higher level of competition he's playing against. Run this through our lead translation model, rightfully jumps up to 2nd place, and then anyone playing in a less competitive league will have a hard time ranking very high. The overall talent metric of GPM is just one component here. We also have a number of skill-based metrics. So we can do similar exercises with passing, dribbling, carrying, a number of goalkeeper metrics as well. Again, also league adjusted, so you can make these apples-to-apples comparisons across the world. So we've talked only about talent so far, and that's an important piece of the puzzle, but in almost any team sport, assembling the most talented roster without regard to fit doesn't get you very far. So we've embedded players in this space, and we've got a few different lenses of looking at this similar type of problem. So let's say you already have a forward on your roster who is a great attacker or play finisher type. You might want someone who's more of a facilitator, more of a setup guy. You can use our clustering models for that, where we have our out-of-the-box clusters we make with a set number and our set labels, but we're also happy to work with you to cater the number and labels to your own style. Another lens is player similarity, where we can look at the players in this space and see who is most similar to each other. So if there's a player whose style you especially appreciate, but who is unavailable, you can try to find other players around the world who are most similar to that style. Additionally, this doesn't work for just the current season. You can use this for past seasons as well. So from my experience in basketball, a common problem that we had was we had this player in this role 3 years ago who was perfect, but they are too old, they're too expensive, they're unavailable for whatever reason today. So who's the modern equivalent of that player? You can use player similarity to answer that kind of a question. And the last lens we look at this problem through is the fit score. For this, we work with you to determine what kinds of players you value, what kinds of stats you value, and how we can best cater this stat to the kinds of players you are looking for. And then we assign a simple 0 to 100 score to every player in the world based on how well they adhere to those tendencies that you've said that you value. And so that frees up your analytics staff to spend more time helping the coaches actually win the game, to helping your training and performance staff, to helping your players stay healthy, to having player development plans. And also, like I said, this is a data pipeline where we have a shared Snowflake database with you. So if your analytics staff wants to take these models and use them as initial inputs to build your own models, you're also welcome to do that as well.
Thank you, Zach. So there's only so much that we can cover in 15 minutes, and what we've showed you is really just the tip of the iceberg. In our current product and in our immediate roadmap, we set up notifications and alerts that allow you to see things like when a player has hit a minutes threshold, or maybe when their minutes have dropped and you know that they might be unhappy and therefore available. We're creating AI agents that you can send on different missions to look at different things among your data sets. We train your semantic layers so that you're using your own nomenclature, your own lingo, your own vocabulary on what your staff call things, especially scouts. And we're creating things like pricing models, all sorts of performance forecasts, and obviously working with more and more different data sets. So we believe that there is an evolved way of doing squad construction. I'm excited to talk to anyone who's ready to take that step with us. Thanks for your time.